Hi everyone, welcome back to English with the Sings. So today we're looking at the character of Gerald Croft in Spectacles for the English Literature Component 2 exam in Spectacles section. So here's a question. Write about Gerald Croft and how he's presented in Spectacles. In your response, you should refer to the extract and the play as a whole, show your understanding of characters and events in the play, 40 marks, and 5 of these marks are allocated for spelling, punctuation, vocabulary, and sentences. So don't forget to check, proofread, capital letters for characters' names, etc. So remember, this is different from the Romeo and Juliet Educas exam, where you have one extract which you write about the extract only for 15 marks, and then you have an essay question on the play as a whole for 25 marks without an extract. This combines that, so you have this extract that you need to write about, and you need to write about the play as a whole. That's really important. It's not enough to just write about the extract. So we'll read the extract first of all, we'll determine where it comes in the play, and then we'll make a plan for how to write about Gerald as a character. So the inspector sharply, your daughter isn't living on the moon, she's here in Brumley too. Sheila, were you in love with her, Gerald? Gerald hesitatingly. I didn't feel about her as she felt about me. Sheila with sharp sarcasm. Of course not, you were the wonderful fairy prince. You must have adored it, Gerald. Gerald, all right, I did for a time. Sheila, that's probably the best thing you've said tonight. At least it's honest. Mrs. Burling, I don't think we want any further details of this disgusting affair. Gerald, you know it wasn't disgusting. Inspector, when did this affair end? Gerald, in the first week of September. She was very gallant about it. Sheila with irony, that was nice for you. Gerald, no it wasn't. He waits a moment, then in a low, troubled tone. She told me she'd been happier than she'd ever been before, but that she knew it couldn't last. I insisted on a parting gift of money to see her through to the end of the year. I got the idea that she thought of leaving Brumley. Did she? Inspector, yes, she kept a rough sort of diary, and she said that she had to go away and be quiet and remember just to make it last longer. Gerald, I see. In that case, as I'm rather more upset by this business than I probably appear to be, I'd be glad if you let me go. I'll come back. Sheila, but just in case you forget or decide not to come back, Gerald, I think you better take this with you. She hands him the ring. Gerald, I see. Well, I was expecting this. Sheila, I don't dislike you as I did half an hour ago, Gerald. In fact, in some odd way, I rather respect you more than I've ever done before. But this has made a difference. You and I aren't the same people who sat down to dinner here. We'd have to start all over again, getting to know each other. Burling. Now, Sheila, I'm not defending him, but you must understand that a lot of young men... Don't interfere, please, father. Gerald knows what I mean, and you apparently don't. Mrs. Burling, I think we'd just about come to an end of this wretched business. Gerald, I don't think so. Excuse me. He goes out, they watch him go in silence. So the first thing to do is to determine where does the extract come from within the wider play. Now, we know this must be at the end of Gerald's interrogation because he leaves, so in Act 2, around the middle of the play. So you can't write about everything in the extract because you won't have enough time. You only have 45 minutes for this question. So you probably only want to spend about 10 minutes writing about the extract. So we'll just pick out a few things that are significant here. So I think one thing that's significant is Sheila calls him the wonderful fairy prince, obviously ironically, but it buys into this whole idea of how Gerald's presented himself as a hero in his interrogation when he's being questioned about how he behaved with Daisy Rent and Eva Smith. And when she says you must have adored it, he does actually admit, all right, I did for a time. And she kind of respects him a little bit because she says at least it's honest. So although Gerald denies his involvement earlier on in the play, now he has opened up, he has been honest about his involvement, and that's given him a bit more respect by Sheila at least. Of course, because it's a play, we can pay close attention to stage directions as well as speech. So notice how Gerald speaks here in a low, troubled tone. So this suggests that he's upset, that he's quite thoughtful about this now. And when he says she told me she'd been happier than she ever had been before, we can see that Gerald did actually make Eva Smith happy. Out of all the other characters, he makes her at least happy for a while, and the inspector does actually treat Gerald less harshly than some of the other characters because of this reason. He later then admits, in that case, I'm rather more upset by this business than I probably appear to be. You can see the hyphens here. The way Gerald speaks is quite broken up. And you can see that he has been affected. And then this momentous occasion when Sheila hands back the ring. Of course, they're engaged at the start of the play, and following the revelation that Gerald has had an affair with Daisy Rent and Eva Smith, Sheila has broken off this engagement, and Gerald was expecting it. So another important stage direction there. And the last important stage direction is when Gerald leaves. So entrances and exits are quite important in the play. He goes out seeming to reflect on what's happened and think about, I suppose, what to do next. So because it's from Act 2, we could put this within the middle of the play. I'm going to look at answering chronologically. You could also use it as a starting point or a springboard and write about the extract first. So let's think about then, how is Gerald Croft presented elsewhere in the text? So in Act 1, in Act 2, in Act 3. So beginning, middle, end. If you can't remember where exactly something comes within an act, then you can still say beginning, middle, end. So in Act 1, Gerald is firmly on the side of Mr. Burling. So Mr. Burling is quite excited by the fact that Gerald is engaged to his daughter, also because of the business opportunities. So he says that the Burlings and Crofts can be working together for lower costs and higher prices, which of course means that they're driven by profit. And to this, Gerald says, "Hear, hear." So it shows he agrees with Mr. Burling, and Mr. Burling also favours him. Even over his own son. He actually says to Gerald, "You're just the kind of son-in-law I always wanted." Further to this, when Mr. Burling is interrogated by the inspector, Gerald again sides with him. So when we learn that Mr. Burling sacked Eva Smith, Gerald says, "You couldn't have done anything else." So couldn't have done, it seems that he doesn't see that any other option would have been possible. So at the beginning then, Gerald is presented as siding with Mr. Burling's capitalist views. And the older generation, those people who are wealthy, stuck in their ways. Then when we get to Act 2, after initially denying that he was involved, and he does also say in Act 1, "I don't come into this suicide business." Which is quite quite cold, really, the fact that he's called it a business, contrasting the inspector's use of emotive language to describe Eva Smith's death. You know, insides burnt out, dying in agony, that kind of thing. It's quite cold. So after denying that in Act 2, he does actually admit he's been involved, but he thinks that he can hide it from the inspector. So he says, we can keep it from him. It suggests that he doesn't really understand the inspector and the way the inspector can get the truth from the characters. He then sort of presents himself as a hero, rescuing Daisy Renton from the clutches of Alderman Megati. He says that she gave him a look that was nothing less than a cry for help. Of course, we might think about why was Gerald at the Palace Bar in the first place. He says it is popular with women of the town, which is a euphemism for prostitutes. So, you know, why was he even there when he is with Sheila, or at all? But he does then present his story as coming in to sort of save Daisy from this bad situation. And that he didn't expect anything from her in return. He says that, and he uses words like insisted, and made, and you can see the word insisted as well in the extract, about how he wanted her to take money. So these verbs are telling us that he sort of had to persuade her to take his help, and that he didn't expect anything in return. So he's presenting himself in this way, I suppose, trying to minimize the damage that has done. And then we could insert the extract here with the other things we've talked about how Sheila understands him being presented as a hero, a wonderful fairy prince. So it's from some kind of fairy tale, how he's upset, and the end of the engagement and the exit. And then we would go to Act 3 in the end. Now, we don't need to speak about the end of Act 2 or the beginning of Act 3 because Gerald's not present. We want to stay focused on the character. So when Gerald does return, he returns with the news that that man wasn't a police inspector. So he says, "We've been had." And he speaks triumphantly. So he's presenting himself as quite clever. Of course, triumphantly tells us he's quite joyful over the news, because he thinks that this means that what they've done doesn't matter. And he doesn't think it matters to such an extent that he also says to Sheila to take back the ring. Now, the fact that he says everything's all right now means he's completely missed the point of the inspector's visit. Because the inspector is there to make them realise the consequences of their actions and how that they've treated other people, particularly the working class. Now, Gerald seems to think that just because Daisy Renton maybe wasn't one person, he's the one to suggest, how do you know it's the same girl? Maybe the inspector had different photographs. Um, but he hasn't realised, as Sheila and Eric have, that it's not just about that. It's about how they treated people. As Sheila said, we all did what we did. And so Gerald hasn't really realised this, and he seems to think that him and Sheila can get back together. Of course, she doesn't accept the ring back because she recognises this, and she also realises that Gerald has had an affair. And of course, then we hear the ring again, that the inspector's on his way to inspect the family again. But here Gerald lets the audience down. We see with all the characters sort of trajectory where Sheila and Eric change throughout the course of the play. Mr. and Mrs. Burling don't. They remain in their capitalist ways. And Gerald is sort of an in-between. He's in between the generations, but he's also in between in terms of whether he changes or not, because he seems to offer some hope when we see in this extract when he's left, he's upset, potentially some guilt, remorse. Although he doesn't really admit responsibility, it seems like that it has affected him. But by the time he comes back, he's completely changed and doesn't seem to think that it is a problem after all. So that's a few thoughts about Gerald and how you might think about structuring an answer. Hope that's helpful, and good luck.